Over the years, I've covered a wide array of mysteries, from the Mothman to UFOs, conspiracies to cold cases. And one topic that seemed to resonate more with all of you, and one that I've always found fascinating, is hauntings. Whether that's haunted places, haunted people, or experiences that people have had that they would consider paranormal in nature. So today, I'm trying something new. And don't worry, this is adding content here on Mystery Archives, so there will still be episodes of The Untold Story for you to enjoy. Those just take a good chunk of time to produce. So, in between those episodes, I'd really like to share stories from you guys, the community, to bring awareness that these kinds of experiences really do happen. And having grown up in a haunted home myself, I know that oftentimes people are hesitant to share their stories, for fear of ridicule, or for fear of whatever they've experienced flaring up again and reigniting their personal nightmare. This platform will hopefully give their stories justice, have them heard, and give you a glimpse into what people like yourselves have experienced. These are your paranormal encounters. There are many mysteries in this world, but finding what to play next isn't one of them. That's right, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is a tactical turn-based MMO battle game that not only is tons of fun, but has a huge emphasis on champion collecting, leveling up, and building skilled teams to take on Raid's challenges and battles of other players in the PvP arena. I'm a sucker for fantastic graphics and gameplay, and both PC and mobile gaming graphics look fantastic. There are billions of ways to customize and build your team of champions with endless content, including new champions and updates every single month. There's tons of awesome bosses to take on, and with Valentine's Day coming up, Raid has some incredible power couples that are worth checking out. I'd have to say my top 3 picks are Venus and Cupidus. Besides Cupidus' armor, which looks awesome, you could potentially be granted an extra turn during combat while receiving a 25% more damage to targets under debuffs. Next is Astralon and Countess Lix. I mean, look at those helmets. Like, dude, I want one. The two together unlock a cool passive that removes debuff from both her and Astralon at the start of every turn. And of course, the amazing Karuto and Yumiko. Not only are the character designs slick as always, but these two together, under the right circumstances, can allow you to hit over 200,000 damage, which is enough to kill most non-boss enemies in the game. Now that's a real power couple right there. Raid's got a ton of cool events to jump into this month. There's Forge Pass Season 7, where you can earn anniversary points as part of a 3-month-long 4th anniversary Titan event, various Valentine's Day activities, and more. Oh, and this month's Prime Gaming drop for Raid features Genbo the Dishonored, a powerful Void champion who is really strong in PvP. He's available until March 2nd for Amazon Prime members. Also, MMA and pro wrestling megastar Ronda Rousey has made an exciting leap into the world of Raid with her very own champion. You can get Ronda by simply opening Raid for 7 days before February 20th. To celebrate Ronda's arrival in Raid, use the special promo Raid Ronda to get a bunch of helpful stuff. Just enter promo code Raid Ronda in-game and all these goodies can be yours. Check the available promo codes for new and old players in the description. So what are you waiting for? If you haven't started playing Raid yet, click my link in the description or scan my QR code on screen, and you'll get a unique bonus worth up to $35. We're talking a free epic champion, Jotun, 100,000 silver, 50 gems, and 2 epic skill tomes. Once you're in the game, find me under the name Papa Coders, and if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. I really have enjoyed Raid as a casual player with lots of my friends, and all around, not only is it free, but it's awesome, so I highly encourage you to give it a try. When a young family encounters the devil in the flesh. Told from the perspective of a young girl, this terrifying tale will have you questioning just what could be happening across the street from you, next door, or even in your very own home. I was almost 7 when these events took place, and I'll be 40 later this year. I lived in the Glendale Apartments in Rock Hill, South Carolina. My baby brother at the time wasn't quite even a year old. Now, my mom was young when she had me at 17, and my stepdad Keith was exactly 2 months to the day older than her. My mom has been gone for 14 years now, but I still remember this day like it was yesterday. We had left to get dinner that night, and by the time we had gotten back, Keith was passed out in the front seat of his little hatchback Mustang in the parking lot. This was the first of 2 that would find themselves wrapped around trees in my town. Keith was suffering from what would later be diagnosed as schizophrenia with bipolar tendencies, and had seemingly been self-medicating to alleviate his symptoms. Since he was asleep, my mom urged me not to wake him, as I helped her get my infant brother at the time out of the car and into our apartment. As we began to wind down for the evening, our phone began to ring, shattering the calm peace that was our lives. It was Keith's mom, Mary. She lived on the other side of the complex, which mostly housed old people and people with disabilities. She sounded panicked, screaming that something was happening in her apartment and that she needed help immediately. My mom rushed to go wake Keith up out in the parking lot, but upon running up to the car, he was nowhere to be found. She rushed back into our apartment, saying that she couldn't find Keith, when he suddenly appeared in the hallway, and neither of us had seen him come into the apartment. He seemed completely out of it and was terrified, saying that something was taking him over and that he couldn't control himself. I saw his eyes. They were black. My mother didn't have time to deal with or process his antics and gathered us to walk to his mother's apartment in the meantime. As we rushed over there as fast as we could, I remember getting a skin-crawling feeling every time Keith looked at me, like it was something completely foreign to this world, peering into my soul. We arrived and were quickly let into Mary's apartment. Her lights were flickering, and her pictures were swaying back and forth on the walls. A heavy presence could be felt by all of us. Mary was deeply religious and couldn't understand just what was taking place, but she believed it to be evil. Keith was now standing in the living room and began to sway back and forth as the activity seemed to intensify. As my mother approached him to ask what he was doing, he began to laugh. This was the deepest, most maniacal laugh I have ever heard, and I still get chills thinking about it. This voice was not his own. My mother quickly backed up, unsure of what to do, and he then began to point at me, saying, "I'm going to sacrifice that child tonight." His eyes were now blood red. Mary, by this time, had grabbed some of her belongings from her room and happened to have some blessed oil along with her Bible. She threw the oil on Keith's face, and it began to boil. The sound of sizzling and screaming was horrific. My mother's love for Keith quickly overpowered her fear, and she pulled him into the bathroom to examine his face. She was freaking out, to say the least, partially because of how unbelievable the circumstances were and just how badly he was burnt on his face. His eyes at this point were rolled into the back of his head. Then suddenly, without warning, he rushed my mom and pinned her against the wall. His younger sister Nikki and his mother quickly rushed in to help free her, with Mary dumping more oil on him. Each time, his skin literally sizzled where it landed. This fortunately worked. Keith now lay catatonic on the bathroom floor, so altogether, us girls moved him into a nearby bedroom and restrained him to the bed using anything we could find for our own safety. Shortly after we did this, his mother called the nearby oratory and asked for a priest to assist us immediately. Nikki, who was a teenager at the time, was trying to comfort me, telling me that Keith was just really sick and not to be scared. She encouraged me to try and get some sleep, and I, of course, couldn't and wouldn't. I didn't dare close my eyes for fear of that thing hurting my mom. In this room with Keith was a picture of Jesus kneeling on top of a mountain. I heard Keith laughing in that otherworldly voice. He called out to me. He said, "You know, little girl, I used to be an angel with the most beautiful wings, until that bastard was born. Then I was cast from atop that mountain and banished." I asked, "Who are you? The devil?" He perked up, looked me dead in my eyes, and said, "I am Lucifer, the light bringer, here in the flesh. I'm not only taking Keith with me, but all of you as well. Now, untie me." I ran hysterically to my mother, who was having a cigarette to calm her nerves. She ran into the room to comfort him. When he said, "Do you want to see proof?" and against her will, my mother then extinguished the cigarette into his arm, with Keith exclaiming, "It feels so good. You'll have to adjust to the searing flames, but in due time, you too will call it home." She then rushed out of the room and closed the door. We waited with bated breath for the priest to arrive, when shortly after 3 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Thank God, it was him. For the next several hours, they attempted to cast this thing out of Keith. Probably for the best, they kept me in the living room, away from the demonic terror that was inhabiting his body. But my God, the smells that wafted throughout the complex, like putrid meat and sulfur. I soon also heard moaning and growling from dogs that didn't exist. There was a strange fog that had enveloped the apartment itself, and a strange flickering light that now emanated from the room where the exorcism was taking place. I began to close my eyes and pray to God harder than I had ever prayed before, wanting and wishing for all of it to end. When suddenly, it did. Keith had seemingly been freed of these spiritual shackles, and although I was terrified, I was more than wanting to finally get some sleep. So after the priest departed and all seemed fine, we slowly made our way back home through the damp, misty morning that was now upon us. Upon arriving home and heading inside, we all began to make our way to our bedrooms to try and sleep. I found myself in my bed, comfy, and finally about to rest, when I felt my bed shake. I quickly opened my eyes to find my bed off the floor, and my bedpost balls screwed off, each one in the corner of each post, floating there. I screamed harder than I've ever screamed before, alerting my mother, who rushed to save me. Upon her running in, my bed suddenly slammed to the ground, and my bedpost balls all fell to the floor. The events of that night and the following morning can never be forgotten by me and my family. For the next year and a half, we dealt with similar smells wafting throughout our apartment, unseen snarls and growls, and a feeling of anxiety, as if our every move was being watched. But thank God, it all eventually faded. I had since asked Keith how he came to be in that state, but I could never really get a clear answer. He often drank moonshine and was in a bad state mentally and spiritually at the time. Perhaps this weakened him enough to let something in, somehow. I've since moved on from that place, but heard something very interesting that I'd also like to share in regards to it. This was the apartment we lived in, and a young boy mysteriously passed away within it not too long ago. The details of the case are hard to find, but I believe he was about as old as I was when everything had taken place to us. There has also been multiple shootings, stabbings, and murders that have taken place near and in the complex itself. It seems like whatever possessed Keith and stalked us maybe never truly left. I'm glad to share my story with all of you, and I just want you to know that these things are very real. The paranormal is real. And please, do not meddle with it, because you just don't know what you could be inviting in. This energy, this evil, wanted my soul, and it seems like it may have taken multiple lives in pursuit of whatever nefarious things it wanted. Leia. I would like to thank Leia for submitting this chilling story of an exorcism that took place to her stepfather when she was a child. The entire situation must have been terrifying to endure, to say the least, and I commend her for being willing to share this with us and warn others that these things are very real indeed. I also believe it's important to bring awareness to these kinds of topics for a number of reasons. I am curious just how Keith became possessed, however, and if it was truly by Lucifer himself or something pretending to be him. All around, a terrifying tale from Leia. Upon laying her head down to sleep, a young woman is seemingly transported to another time or place where she interacts with malevolent spirits. This one may just make you wonder if the very same has ever happened to you. One hot Saturday morning in 2001, my ex-husband Dean and I went to the grocery store. By the time we returned home and put everything away, it was almost noon. I prepared some lunch for us, and by 2 p.m., I announced that the heat had made me feel so very tired and that I would need to lie down. Dean would go on to watch TV with the volume on low, and I closed the bedroom door. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I went out like a light. Then in what seemed like only 5 minutes later, I was woken up by a lady speaking beside my bed. It was as if she was addressing another person, but yet in a crystal clear voice across the room. She said something along the lines of, "Don't disturb her, let her sleep." This startled me. I immediately sat up in my bed and I looked around, but saw nothing. I knew I wasn't dreaming as the voice was real, and yet spoke at an audible enough level even to wake me up. Regardless, whether a dream or real, I was too exhausted and quickly fell asleep again. Now this is where things took a stranger turn. I felt my soul leave my body. It rose up to where the wall met the ceiling. I crossed through the wall and into another place in time. I was no longer within my home, but found myself in a scene from the 18th century. It was similar to watching a black and white film, but in varying shades of gray. I saw a few people who were extravagantly dressed and wore coiffed and powdered wigs, sitting on a plush divan and some armchairs. They sat almost motionless by a small low-lying table. Only the woman slowly looked about, but nobody seemed to notice me. I looked to my left and saw a couple standing still, arms held in an arch above in the air, hands touching, poised, as if waiting for music to start for their dance. I looked past them and saw a few men, one at each small table just sitting quietly and motionless. Then I looked to my right, past the few people I initially saw, and looked in awe at the sight before me. I realized I was in a vast hall as far as the eye could see. I saw no other people, and the next thing I knew, I was back in my body, seemingly asleep, yet aware of my surroundings. I was made aware of the large crowd of people outside of my bedroom door. The sound was similar to what you would hear in a crowded bar, many people talking amongst themselves. However, there was one woman's voice that could be heard slightly above the rest of the crowd. I didn't pay it any special attention, as I wasn't focusing on anyone in particular, nor catch what she had said. And what was only a moment later, that same voice was louder and closer this time, just on the other side of my bedroom door. Although I paid a little more attention now, what she said was still indiscernible, and the voice was yet to be one that I recognized, a voice belonging to a stranger. In what seemed just another moment again, she opened the door, stepped into my room, and then shut the door behind her. I laid frozen in my bed, unable to move. Yet, I felt real terror at this point. Although I couldn't move at all, my eyes were fixed atop of the wall. Somehow, with my mind's eye, I saw her. It was my mother who had passed away 21 years earlier. She wore a long white shroud, which I never got to see her in, but I knew that she had been buried in one. By now, I was totally terrified. I wanted to scream out for help. Better still to get out of there. But I wasn't able to move a muscle. I watched my mother pace to and fro, past the foot of my bed, in absolute rage. She was so angry with me. She was literally spitting mad while she was scolding me. Never had I seen her this angry. The one thing I did notice, once my mother's spirit had entered the room, was that while my eyes were fixed near the ceiling, it was within my range of sight that I'd seen a soft, white, gaseous ball of light appear to my right at the corner of the ceiling. It was about the size of a basketball, though not quite as spherical. It was so very slow moving, like a swirl of white smoke within itself. Somehow I felt like it was protecting me from this evil, like a guardian angel. Once my mother was done raging at me, she faced the door and held the door slightly open. She paused and told me that I'd be dead by midnight tonight. She then shut the door behind her and left. As soon as she was out the door, the ball of light had dissipated too, and I felt instant relief. I looked at the clock, and it was now 3 p.m. All of this strangeness took place in the space of one terrifying hour. I still don't know if that was the spirit of my mother or something evil imitating her. All I know is that I jumped out of bed and rushed to the lounge room, telling Dean what I had seen, though I didn't mention my mother's parting words. Dean wasn't remotely interested. He only mumbled as I interrupted him watching his program. Well, that was the end of the nap I wasn't quite able to get. As evening approached, I constantly glanced at my watch. Although we retired for the day at about 10 p.m., that night I was fearful, yet resigned to my fate. I hadn't told a soul about my mother's message, in case it tempted fate. On waking the next morning, I couldn't have felt more relieved and thrilled to still be alive. Now that it felt safe to do so, I told Dean and later my neighbor about it all. They showed me the goosebumps on their arms and expressed fear as I recounted my experience. This was 22 years ago, and I still think of that day and the sheer terror that it brought me. It's a day that I can never forget. Johanna. That story was chilling, Johanna. I too am curious if it was some kind of spirit impersonating your mother, or if it was somehow her. The detail of what she was wearing also happened to be what she was buried in literally gave me goosebumps. So thank you so much for sharing your story and continuing to bring awareness to these topics. A young man seemingly interacts with his grandmother, who has long since passed away, but he isn't the only one that sees and feels her presence. This was in reference to watching one of my videos. Watching this video reminded me of something that's been going on in my house. My wife's grandmother died before we got together, and her son was the last person in the hospital room with her when she passed. Now, my work schedule varies, but generally, I'm up between 3 and 4 a.m. every day. Sometimes, I feel a presence, or I thought I saw what was a shadow in my peripheral vision. I finally told my wife about this a while back, and she proceeded to tell me that her autistic son regularly speaks to his deceased grandmother. We've both spoken to him multiple times, and apparently she visits him constantly. My wife admitted that she's seen her in our house a couple of times as well. I've offered to have the house cleansed, but my wife said no. Apparently his grandmother visits him all the time and watches over him, and he's admitted that he still sees her. He's autistic, so he's very honest with everything. I'd like your guys' input about this. Thank you, Caveman. Well, Caveman, especially since he's autistic, that really does convince me of his sincerity and honesty. The young man clearly doesn't have a motivation to gain anything by saying this. And when you have felt this presence, is it as she was in life? Is it more of a benevolent energy or something else? It's also very interesting that your wife has seen her on multiple occasions as well. Perhaps she is watching over her grandson. Children often have an extra sense, it seems like, to be able to interact with the spirit world. Reading your story reminded me of when my brother was younger, and we had a very similar situation. My mom's father, Paul, had passed away in their family home in 2002 when my brother was just 2 years old. Prior to his passing, Paul seemed to be motioning for things to go away, things that we couldn't see, perhaps trying to state that he wasn't ready to go yet. Several months after his passing, with my grandmother Agnes still inhabiting the very same house, my brother Caden had started to interact with something that we couldn't see. He would often play around the living room, which was the same room my grandfather passed away in. One day, when he was in a full conversation with this person, my mother asked him who he was talking to, and he said, Grandpa Paul. It took the very breath out of her lungs. These interactions were fairly frequent until he was about 4 or 5 years old. Then they suddenly went away one day. It truly makes one beg the question, just how often do our loved ones truly watch over us? Thanks for sharing this one, Caveman. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to hear more content like this, and if you enjoyed the video, please help me out in the algorithm by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, and subscribing with notifications if you're new here. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, for helping us out. And although a short ad may be an inconvenience for some of you, it truly helps us creators out much more than you know. If you'd like to submit a story to have it read by yours truly, please email me at mysteryarchives@gmail.com. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I think it's very important to bring awareness to the paranormal question. It in a sense is the ultimate question in my opinion. What truly happens when we pass through the veil of this reality and into the afterlife? I appreciate all of you as always. I hope all of you are doing well mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I hope your year is heading in a vibrant and positive direction. And I wish you all nothing but the best. Until next time, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Stay safe out there, and take care.